Hi, good morning, Facebook. So today is day 25 of the 25-day mental health challenge. They say that the journey of 1,000 miles always begins with the first step. And so we are here today, 25 days all gone. And I hope it's been as productive for you as it's been for me. It's been my utmost pleasure and privilege recording these videos, and I'm just so grateful to everyone who has fed back in one way or the other. The response has been really very encouraging. So we're on day 25, and at the end of this video, I'm going to be making some announcements about next steps. So please do stay with me on this particular one. And like I said on the previous videos, this video is one that I've been looking forward to recording for a very long time, and I'm happy that today has finally come. In terms of the content of this video, in case you want to refer to a fuller content of it, I actually wrote 2 articles in Testify newspaper. That's the Testify newspaper of February 2020 and also March 2020. There's a fuller details of the things that I'm going to be discussing today in those editions of the Testify newspaper. So you can find Testify newspaper online and get in touch with them if you would like those articles. However, today I'm talking about thought and mental health. How does our thinking affect our mental health? In reality, one of the greatest things you can do in order to manage your mental health is actually to master your thoughts and manage your thoughts. In fact, several of the psychological therapies and interventions that we offer in mental health as mental health professionals is actually about mastering your thoughts. It's about recognizing the toxic thought patterns and mastering them, dealing with them. And so I'm really excited, as you can see, sharing today's video. So what has thoughts got to do with mental health? To start with, let me start by saying that thoughts are things. There's no such thing as an innocuous thought. The reality is that thoughts are things, they are physical things, and they occupy real mental real estate in the brain. So whenever you think a thought, it actually generates several chemical processes, electrical impulses, messages are exchanged between the cells of the brain, and they create a chemical process. And when that chemical process continues on an habitual basis, it actually changes the chemical atmosphere in the brain, and it also changes the architecture of the brain. That's why somebody said that if you know how powerful your thoughts are, you will never think a negative thought again in your life. And I think that's one message I want to leave with you today, that if you know how powerful your thoughts are, you will never think a negative thought again in your life. And in this video, I'm going to try and really break down thoughts, because people usually try to teach us what to think, but not how to think. I hope that at the end of this video, you will be able to obtain some skills about how to really think and about how to master your thoughts. So the other thing to say about thoughts is that thoughts are so powerful that the Harvard Medical School Body and Mind Institute actually tell us that 75% to 95% of physical, mental, and behavioral illnesses are actually associated with our thought life. I think I need to say that again. 75 to 98% of physical, mental, and behavioral illnesses are in some way linked to our thinking. They are in some way linked to our thought life. So that's how important thoughts are to outcomes in life. So now, the other thing we do know is that thinking actually occurs on 3 levels, and that's where it gets really very tricky. Thinking occurs in 3 levels, and a lot of the thinking that we do is very subconscious. If I were to ask you, for instance, that today when you are driving back from work, maybe you've been to work today, you've commuted to work, or when you are preparing dinner for your family, or when you are maybe at 12 o'clock midday today, what exactly was in your mind? What were you musing over? What was the center, the theme of your thoughts? The likelihood is that you are probably not going to be able to remember, except there was something very important that happened at the time that will make you remember your thoughts. The import is that thinking is something that we do on a very subtle, it is a very subtle thing, and many times we are not conscious of it. So thinking occurs on three levels. The first one is that the conscious thoughts. These are the thoughts that we are aware of. For instance, I knew that I was going to be doing a video today on thinking and mental health. I knew that, and that was something that's been on my mind for a while. That was something I consciously decided and agreed to. Just like you might decide that, oh, I'm going to have spaghetti bolognese for dinner. That's something that you consciously thought about and you agreed on. It's conscious, you know about it. However, on the deeper level, on another level, is what we call automatic thoughts. Automatic thoughts are like streams of water that are running very slowly. They are like commentaries, that they are ongoing commentaries. They are like a perpetual chatter, like an ongoing chatter in your mind. It's like an endless chatter, and they are so subtle. Imagine yourself, maybe you are into DIY, you are Saturday morning, you are in your garage, you are tinkering with your car or tinkering with a bicycle or anything that catches your fancy. And whilst you are doing that work, you want to keep your mind engaged, or you want to you don't want to deal with the quietness of the atmosphere. So you turn on a transistor radio. I know transistor radios are things that are probably things that we've forgotten about completely now, but there are still a few people that carry them around. So at the background is the commentary of a transistor radio that you're not particularly paying attention to, but it continues to run. That's how automatic thoughts are. They are like a endless stream of thoughts that go on in our mind day in, day out. And many times we are not conscious of them. The other thing about those type of thoughts is that they can either be positive, negative, or neutral. Now, why is that important? It's important because negative automatic thoughts are associated with certain mental health problems. One, they're associated with low self-esteem. They're associated with self-criticism, depression, anxiety, and importantly, negative automatic thoughts are also associated with underachievement in personal and professional life. So basically, your thoughts are running your life. Your thoughts determine the outcomes of your life. And like, I don't hide the fact that I'm a Christian, and that aligns with scriptures. The scripture says that as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. So basically, your thinking is either making your life fly or fall. That's the reality of it. And the good thing is you can do something about it. So we've talked about two levels of thinking now. We've talked about the conscious thoughts. We've talked about the automatic thoughts, which are really like they're in the background. They're always an ongoing commentary in the mind. The third level of thoughts, which is the deepest level of thoughts, are actually what we call the core beliefs. And the core beliefs are the subconscious rules that we live our lives by. Core beliefs are the things that you really believe in your knower. They are the deep things that they've been ingrained into you from childhood and from your very early life. And they are the things that you believe about yourself, about the world, about others, and about the future. They are very deeply ingrained. And those are the things that really run the show. They are the ones that run the show of your automatic thoughts. And many times they are the ones that run the show and drive your conscious thoughts. So those are the core beliefs, and they result from the interaction you've had with the prominent people in your life as a child. It could be mostly from parents, and also from teachers, from mentors, from friends, from society, from media. Those are things that really run the show. And that's why sometimes really the core beliefs always come to the fore at some point in one way or the other. I wouldn't go into the illustrations of how core beliefs can affect our lives or how they can play out in lives today. But in the article that I talked about in Testify magazine, which was the March edition of Testify newspaper, I actually gave examples and illustrations of how core beliefs can actually rear their ugly heads many, many years on and actually pan out, despite the fact that they've been hidden for a long time. So those are the subconscious thoughts that actually run people's life. For instance, somebody could believe that they are unlovable, and that's because maybe they were not treated right as children, maybe they were bullied, or maybe their parents did not really take them seriously or did not care for them, or they were neglected, and they just believe that they're unlovable. And no matter how things pan out in life, even if they get married and they get into relationships, that core belief would always ruin things. And at this point, I just want to read to you something that I read from one of my most favorite authors in terms of thoughts, neuroscience, dealing with mental problems, and that's Dr. Caroline Leaf. She's one of my favorite authors in the field, and I'm just going to read to you what she's written in one of her books, which I think it's a very powerful message to think about. It says, "You won't forgive that person, get rid of that anxiety or depression, follow that essential preventative health care, strive to that intellectual level you know you are capable of, follow that dream, eat that organic food, do that diet, be that great parent or husband or wife or friend, get that promotion, or make other changes to create a quality, positive lifestyle, unless you first choose to get your mind right and switch on your brain. After all, the ability to think and choose and to use your mind correctly is often the hardest step, but it is the first and most powerful step." I hope you can listen to that again when you play back this video. I think that's one of the most profound things I've read in literature, in terms of how our thoughts actually drive our lives. And then it ends by saying that if you realize how powerful your thoughts are, you will never think a negative thought. That's just a food for thought. So we now know that thinking occurs on three levels: the conscious thoughts, the automatic thoughts, which can be negative, which can be neutral, and which can also be positive. And then we also have the core beliefs, which are the subconscious rules by which we live our lives. So at this point, I'm just going to give you a few illustrations of what type of negative automatic thoughts or thinking traps that we sometimes find ourselves in and that we run our lives by. So thinking traps are basically negative automatic thoughts, and they are peculiar negative automatic thoughts because they are the ways in which we think that we are so sure that we are right, but it's the way of our minds deceiving us to think that we are right when in actual sense we are far from reality. So it's a twisted way of thinking, and I'm sure that people who are looking at me and thinking, "Oh, that's not me." But I hope that you can at least listen to the video and see whether it could be you. Now, so those are negative automatic, those are thinking traps. What are the type of thinking traps that are common, that we commonly encounter? There are several of them. Some people say there are 12, some people say there are 16, but I'll just name a few. And the very common one is what is called all or nothing thinking, or it's also called black or white thinking. Let me give you a typical illustration. It's to think that if this video that I'm doing today, recording today, is not impeccable, 100% flawless, if it doesn't follow to the script that I've prepared, to the verbatim script that I've prepared, then it's no good to anyone. So basically, what all or nothing thinking says is that there is no middle ground. It's either perfect and flawless, or it's a failure and disaster. So there are no grays. So it thinks in shades of white and black. And if it's not white, it has to be black. If it's not black, it has to be white. And I challenge you to think about areas in your life where that might be panning out, where you are all or nothing. It's either, and I want to identify with that. I want to give an illustration from my own private life. For a very, very long time, even though by God's grace, I have been involved in public speaking for about 25 years or a little more, Up until very recently, I had serious difficulties in listening to the playback of any audio or video message that I record. And the reason is because as soon as I begin to listen, all those voices begin to, all the self-talk begin to run it riot. I begin to see where I didn't pronounce things right, where I should have paused when I didn't pause, where my pace was too fast, where I just, and all those things begin to come to me. And at that point, I just switch off the video or switch off the message because I think this is not going anywhere. I don't think anybody would have been blessed by what I just said. I don't think anybody's going to listen to it. And that was true to true. I mean, this is really being honest with you. And that was creating havoc for me for a very long time. But at some point, I had to begin to challenge those thoughts and to see that I was thinking in an all or none way. The fact that my speeches or my messages in church were not impeccable to the letter did not mean that they weren't of benefit to a lot of people. So I had to expose those thoughts to evidence and found that it wasn't true. So that's all or nothing thinking. The other one that people also talk about is overgeneralization. Overgeneralization is basically making great assumptions, final assumptions, far-reaching assumptions based on one piece of evidence or one, for instance, oh, I'm a bad parent. And the reason why I'm a bad parent is because 2 days ago, I got into traffic, I was running late, and I didn't pick up my daughter from school until 1 hour after closing time. And the teacher had to wait behind. And by the time I arrived, they were already thinking of what to do. And because of that, I'm a bad parent. And it ignores the fact that every single day for the last 10 years or so, I've always picked up on time. That's overgeneralization, basing your assumption of making a great assumption based on one single evidence that is flawed. The other one that people talk about is labeling. So somebody uses one single word to describe their lives. I'm a loser. I'm a failure. People say things like that. They might not say it, but they might think it. It's always, if things are going to go wrong, it always happens to them. And these are self-fulfilling prophecies because that's what they are carrying. It's only a matter of time before it plays out in life. So those are labeling. Somebody has used a particular word, a single word or a single phrase to describe themselves, even though it's not based on evidence. So that's labeling. The other one that is also common is what is called mind reading. Let me start by saying that this type of pattern can be a killer in relationships. It can destroy marriages, it can destroy relationships, and many times it happens. Mind reading, to start with, evidence shows that human beings are very flawed at reading other people's minds and intentions. So many times, my boss must be very cross with me because she came in from lunch and she didn't say hello, and I hadn't seen her for 2 weeks. I'd been on holiday. Maybe your boss, when she came through the door, was so consumed in her own thoughts about the next meeting she was going to go into, about how she was going to plan the management meeting for the month, that she saw you but she didn't see you. And many times I've been guilty of that. I get into church or I'm so consumed in my own thoughts that I walk past people and they think, oh, why is Brother Ayodele ignoring us? But in actual sense, I'm in a different world. And so that's mind reading. People then begin to think, oh, it's because it's obnoxious, it's because it's arrogant. And we make up our minds and read other people's intention without ever asking them what exactly is on their minds. And all of these things, when we continue to ruminate on them and dwell on them and expand on them, they create havoc. They make our lives difficult, they make our lives unhappy, and sometimes they then go on to actually create mental difficulties. So those are a few thinking traps that I've mentioned, but there are several of them. Now, how do you deal with them? Because that's really the crux of the matter. The first thing is recognition. You need to recognize that those thinking traps exist. And the way to recognize them is to listen to your self-talk. What do you begin to notice the things that go through your mind, particularly when things don't go right? When you are caught in traffic, you are going for that dream job interview, and suddenly the trains are running late, or or you are caught in traffic and you are going to get there late. What are the things that play in your mind when you don't get that job, when you've been declined the mortgage, when you don't pass that exam, when your grades are not as you wanted them to be? What are the thoughts that run through your mind? What's the self-talk? What's that commentary that begins to run? Those will give you the hint to your thinking traps. The other thing is, so you need to recognize them. And one of the ways you can also recognize them is to hold yourself accountable to your spouse or to somebody who is a friend or who is very important in your life, or your parent or your brother or sister, somebody who sees you frequently, to say, can you call me out anytime I express those type of thoughts? Because the reality is that not only do we think about them, not only do we think them, eventually we'll talk them as well. Your thoughts will always force their way into your talk. Your thoughts will always force their way into your talk. So it's important to bear that in mind. So those are the two things you can do in real life, recognizing them. And when you then recognize a pattern, the next thing to do is to record them. Journaling is a very effective way of actually capturing our thoughts and seeing the negative traps, seeing the patterns and seeing the themes. Recording them is very important. So we've talked about recognition, we've talked about recording. The third thing is rationalizing. So when you say you're a bad parent because you didn't pick up your daughter on time, let's challenge that thought. Let's rationalize it. Let's bring the evidence that is for and against that type of thinking. In the first instance, if you told your friend that experience, what will your friend say to you? Will your friend also agree that you're a bad parent because for 1 day out of 10 you haven't picked up your daughter on time and that makes you a bad parent? What is the evidence against what you've just thought about? What are the possible alternative explanations? The boss that came in and didn't say hello, will it be that she was in her own world, even though she was seeing you and she didn't see you? What are the plausible explanations? And on a personal level, like I said, because I'm a Christian, the other way that I challenge my thoughts and rationalize them is to challenge them to the truth of the gospel. How does this relate to the scriptures? Does this align with what the Bible says about me, for instance? When I start thinking that I'm a loser, I'm never going to make a headway, does that align with what the Bible says about me, for instance, that I'm going to be the head and not the tail, that God has good plans for me? And when I'm able to see that there is a malalignment, I then bring those thoughts to align with what God says about me. So that's rationalization. And then when we've rationalized thoughts and we find out that they are not working, that they are not in keeping with what is truth and evidence, we reject them. So recognition, recording, rationalization, rejection. We're allowed to reject thoughts. There are some thoughts that are living rent-free, mortgage-free in our heads that have no right being there. Even if they were paying us a mortgage and rent, we shouldn't even be letting them live there. Yet they are roaming free and running our lives and sometimes ruining it, mortgage-free, rent-free. So we reject them, and the next thing is to replace them. I've got a confession to make here. There was a time in my life when I was stepping into new roles and I used to look into the mirror first thing in the morning and sometimes as and when possible, and I used to look at the mirror and tell myself who was in the mirror. I'll say this was a new role I was stepping into. I will introduce myself, this is my name, and I will say this is my role. I needed to get my mind used to the fact that I was entering into a new phase in my life. And sometimes you need to replace those thoughts in a conscious way, really saying the things that you believe, the things that you know. And those things work. They've worked for me, and in a way they've helped me to manage my mental health in a very significant way. And I do believe that it will work for you if you put it to practice. So please don't forget, it's recognition, recording, rationalization, rejection, and replacement. Those are the strategies to dealing with negative thoughts. Now, the next thing I wanted to talk about is, where is this going? Today is day 25, and I'm really excited. As you can see, I'm trying to contain my excitement. And this is a very long video, but we are finishing soon. So over these 25 days, it's become apparent to me. Actually, it's taken a month actually, because I just checked the dates today and I found out that it's taking a month actually. I started on the 1st of September and today is the 1st of October, but it's all good. Now, over this period, it's become apparent to me from the feedback I've been getting across board that this is an area of need in terms of providing information in bite-sized, digestible form about mental health. And so I'm actually going on to set myself a different challenge, which is that I've now started a YouTube video and it's going to be called Tripart Care. So it's Tripart Care, as in TRIPART care. And that's because, as you would have seen from these videos, that human beings, we have a body, we have a soul, and that's where the realms of our mind, our thoughts, and that's where mental illness occurs. But also there's a spiritual being, a spiritual part to human beings. So really, Tripart Care will still be a place where I will share videos like this, but as I've been doing all along, it will be a place where thoughts will be addressed in terms of looking at the three parts of human beings. We will be concentrating on the mind, the soul, which is the mind, the mind, the thinking, the soul. However, we would also look at the connection with the body and the connection with the spirit as well. So it's going to be, and particularly I will also be giving information that people can relate to in terms of people of faith, particularly people. I'll be giving information that people of the Christian faith can relate to in terms of the fact that mental illness as it relates to people who are of the Christian faith, and secondly, also people who, specifically people who are of black ethnic minority backgrounds, because sometimes we find that because of those in those communities, sometimes we find that the information that is available is such that we can't relate to, and sometimes that can alienate people from getting help. So I'm hoping that that will be a resource. And what I'm asking of you, please, is that please share this video on your social media platforms. But importantly, please subscribe to Tripart Care. Tripart Care. Please subscribe to that YouTube video. I aim to upload all the 25 videos over the last 25 days onto that site, onto that YouTube link. But more importantly, also to produce one video every week going forward. So please, I will be putting the link to the Tripart Care YouTube channel on there. And I just want to give a shout out to people who have supported me. Thank you to Reverend Victoria Lawrence, who pushed me into this. She nominated me, but it was a push. Thank you for doing it. And to several people who have commented, who have shared. There are people who have consistently shared every video that I've produced. I really do appreciate you. Thank you so much. And I hope that we can take these messages across the globe, across frontiers, and that these messages can actually help people, that people can be well in their mental well-being, they can achieve mental well-being. The other thing, of course, that I want to say is that I'm also hoping that I will be producing videos that sometimes address the mental health and mental well-being needs of leaders, particularly Christian leaders, because that's also an area of need. There are people who are experiencing burnout, people who are struggling under the weight of leadership in church, and they are struggling and they don't know where to turn to or where to get help for their mental health. So thank you so much. Once again, don't forget to subscribe to Tripart Care. That's a YouTube channel, Tripart Care, and that YouTube channel is already live. Like I said, I'll be posting the link for Tripart Care. Thank you very much for listening and have a good day. Bye.